literacy. I'm happy to see that some other that there are people on the call that will be that have administered the Apple, even if it's in middle school. So there's many different ways to administer the Apple and what it's about. So I'm going to go ahead and start the show off. A little bit about us at Language Testing International. So our assessments at Language Testing International are created by AAPPL. So AAPPL creates all of our assessments, and we are the sole proprietor of the AAPPL assessments. So we've been their exclusive licensee since 1992. We deliver about 900,000 tests a year throughout end-to-end security platform in academics, government, corporate markets, many different places. And then we also test in 120 languages and in approximately 60 different countries. So that's just a big scope of what Language Testing International is, what we do, and who we test and how valid our assessments actually are. If there are any questions throughout, I know that there's a chat going on, so feel free to put it in the chat. We'll try and answer them. If someone can just notify me when there's a question, or if there is any, if you want to come off mute also, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I will collect those questions and remind you later.
Great, thank you. Okay. So this over here is a really important slide. I like this slide because it explains a lot about the Apple and the background of it. So the Apple assessment is an online assessment and is an HTML5. It has age-appropriate content for middle school through high school age students, and it assesses students in 4 components. We assess students in interpersonal listening and speaking, presentational writing, interpretive listening, and interpretive reading. So across those 3 modes, we're testing anywhere between, we have assessments for students from 3rd grade through 12th grade, but they all are split up depending on the assessment. Okay. Each component takes about, so I'll speak a little bit about these components and I'll show you some screen grabs of them. This first component is the interpersonal listening and speaking. That's a conversational approach where your student has an opportunity to actually watch a video of a question from another person, and they have an opportunity to answer back in the target language. The student can watch the video up to 2 times before they're prompted to actually answer the question. If you have any students that need any special accommodations when it comes to taking time on assessments, we have a special way of requesting these accommodations, and I can go through that also. But what you can ask for this particular assessment is for unlimited viewings of the video or double time to be able to answer the question. That's really the only part of the assessment that you need to require accommodations, because we already have a lot of those accommodations embedded. For presentational writing, there is no, one thing I forgot to mention, for interpersonal listening and speaking, there's 18 different prompts. So the student will be answering 18 questions throughout this portion of the assessment. That takes about a half an hour. So those questions, the reason why there's 18 questions is because we want to see what the student knows. We're measuring proficiency. We want the student to give us as much as they know with that language as they possibly can. It really doesn't matter how long a student speaks. It really is about how they use the language they know in an impromptu situation to answer a question directly. This next portion over here is our presentational writing. We believe that this is the one that takes the longest for students because they're actually writing on a keyboard, typing on a keyboard in a different language. And that's oftentimes not something that they're used to. So this we are seeing on average takes about 45 minutes, but there is no timing component to this. So the students can take as much time as they need. We really don't think that after an hour, they should be completed with this assessment. If they're taking longer than that, then they're kind of just spinning their wheels and probably getting a little stressed out. And that's one thing we don't want our students to do when taking the Apple. This is a reminder for students, and I always like to say this to instructors, is to remind your students that the Apple is an assessment about what you do know and not about what you don't know. And that's really, really important. Then you have the interpretive listening and interpretive reading. The interpretive listening and interpretive reading are a matching opportunity for the assessment. So The students will read something or listen to something and be able to match some questions to those components. That again takes about a half an hour each. So you're looking at a complete assessment. I'd like to maybe think about, if you're thinking about doing all 4 components, to think about 2.5 hours. They don't all have to be done at once. They can be split up amongst a couple different days. They can be taken in different orders. That part of the scheduling is up to you as instructors. We just provide the assessment, and there's an opportunity for you to take the test whenever you need it. Okay. Before each section of the assessment, there is a coach. Her name is Mrs. Patel. She walks the students through the assessment, and she tells and reminds the students about certain things that they need to do, reminds them, don't open a new screen while you're taking the assessment, because it'll kick the student off. If the student gets kicked off, that's okay. They can go and join back in right from where they left off. Students just cannot work backwards. They just start from where they left off and continue from there. Okay. And they have an opportunity to do that throughout the assessment, even if it's from one day to the next. Okay. I'm going to stop there real quick and see if there's any questions. Well, you'll let me know, right? If there's any questions that come up. Okay.
Yes,
great.
I will let you know. So far, I haven't heard any question. Let me remind, which is we do have the chat function. So if you do have the question, please type in chat, and I will collect it and I will share with our speech today. So please, if you have a question, don't hesitate and post it on the chat board. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You can continue.
Very good. So over here are the languages that we cover with the Apple. The Apple covers Arabic, Chinese Mandarin, English, French, German, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Portuguese, Russian, Spanish, and we also have an assessment for Latin. It's called the ALIRA. The ALIRA is a little bit different. It's not the Apple. The ALIRA is a Latin reading test, but it does qualify for the Seal of Biliteracy. So those are really important things. If there are other languages that are not on this list that you're interested in, we have another assessment. It's called the OPI and WPT for the Seal of Biliteracy. This is specific for our 11th and 12th graders that have a heritage language or know a language that is not commonly taught in the United States. They can actually test for the Seal of Biliteracy, and it's been approved throughout the country to be used for the Seal of Biliteracy. Again, that's called our OPI WPT Seal of Biliteracy bundle, and we can discuss that if you're interested. After the call, I'll share my email. If you're interested in any other languages, feel free to email me and I'll explain a little bit more about that. This assessment over here for the Apple, we have our Apple E. So we have 3 forms for the Apple. Apple E, Apple Form E, Apple Form B, and Apple Form A. Apple Form E is for our 3rd and 4th graders, and that only comes in a few languages: English, Chinese Mandarin, and French. So, and Spanish, English, Chinese Mandarin, and French. So those are for our 3rd and 4th graders, and that is only one section of the assessment. It is the interpersonal listening and speaking. So if you're interested in learning more about this, feel free again to email me after the call. Okay, so we're always wondering about the Apple. What is performance and proficiency? As you know, AAPPL has described the difference between proficiency and performance. Performance helps learners use language that has been learned and practiced in a specific setting. Proficiency helps them develop the ability to use the language in real-world settings in a spontaneous, non-rehearsed setting. So a classroom performance and real-world proficiency. What are some of the supporting elements of the Apple? This is some really important stuff over here. Some supporting elements include world readiness standards, proficiency guidelines, performance descriptors, and can-do statements. These are all things that the Apple can provide you when it comes to our data that we report back to you. This assessment does not have arbitrary items. Everything in the Apple is tightly aligned to AAPPL. There is a purpose for every item on the test. And I'm going to walk you through some of those student experiences now. Okay. There are various ways that Apple can be used in your program. So some might be wondering, okay, for the Seal of Biliteracy, but I know certain people might want to assess students in different grade levels. So these are things that can work. The Apple can help determine programs placement of students in particular levels. Programs can determine minimum requirements for student placement, regardless of how or where they acquired the language. Some examples are students transferred from a different district or school, transitioning to middle school and to high school. So that can be used for that. The AAPPL assessment is a consistent way to evaluate student abilities across 4 modes of communication: programmatic benchmark or assessment of programming. So a positive washback for learners. It allows you to look at a test report across the program and to inform teaching moving forward. So the AAPPL reports are an excellent tool that can be used for resources for teachers and instructors. It is an accepted test to qualify again for the Seal of Biliteracy, which is very important, and can also be used for distinguished students recognition, and can be used to assess students remotely. So there are many reasons why the AAPPL is very important. It can tell us how students are performing right now, but it can also inform us on how to move forward with these students and how to help them improve. So the AAPPL is definitely an excellent learning tool. Here are some screen grabs that I like to always show when I do my presentations, because I think this gives an understanding of, an inside look. On our website, there is a link to actually do a demo. And that demo is really helpful to get students started on what the experience of the assessment is. So if your students are preparing to take the AAPPL assessment or would like to learn a little bit more about the AAPPL, there is a demo link that allows you to take the AAPPL. All 4 sections will give you 4 questions for each section. And it's really more about the experience of the assessment. Anyone can take this: students, parents, teachers. You can do it as a group. It's really important to do prior to taking the AAPPL. This over here is a screen grab of Mrs. Patel. She's the coach that walks the students through. So this is a good reminder of always having somebody there to kind of remind you of the rules. And then over here on the right-hand side, this is super important. This is called our AAPPL system check. Now, the AAPPL system check is something that a lot of instructors and teachers, administrators have a question about. What do we need for IT? It's an online assessment. What are the issues? What comes up? This is a link on our site that will open up, and it will automatically measure your bandwidth to make sure your internet is strong enough for this assessment, that your web browser is up to date, that your microphone is working. So there are a couple things that you do need for the AAPPL. You would need a headset with a microphone in order to be able to hear and speak. You'll need a screen because you'll have a video, so you'll be able to watch the video. So it'll walk you through this process and make sure everything is working for you. And then down here is an opportunity for you to download a specific keyboard. If you're testing in a language that you need to download a specific keyboard for, they will walk you through that process and how to do that in your operating system. This over here is a screen grab of our interpersonal listening and speaking. This was the part that I was telling you all about, that it is a conversational approach. So this is like us having a conversation. I ask you a question, you answer the question. Again, you get 2 chances to be able to watch the video. If your student needs more than that, again, that is a request through our accommodations team to help you with that. And that's very simple email. We also have information on that on our website. So this person will ask the student a question, and they can answer the question right away and start recording. If they want to watch it a second time, they can. They'll be able to click on it for a second time. After that second attempt of them watching the video, the system automatically starts recording your student answer the question. They have about a minute to answer. So the learners interact and negotiate in many different ways when it comes to this. Again, there's 18 prompts, which gives the student an ability and an opportunity to really exhibit their proficiency. Even if there's a question, let's say, that the student is not comfortable with answering. Let's say it's question number 2. Maybe question 3, 4, and 5 will be better for them. And that's what we want to show. It's like, it's not just because you did not do well in one question that lowers your proficiency. We like to give those 18 questions to really get a rich feel for how the student is doing and how the student is speaking. Also giving them a lot of confidence throughout, right? If they get one question and they don't understand it, but the next one is something that they kind of can really produce an answer to, it works really well for them. This next slide over here is a screen grab of our interpretive reading and our interpretive listening. Over here, each student will have 6 of these. So they'll have 6 reading and 6 listening. But throughout these 6, you have an opportunity to answer 4 questions. So this is really important. A student will be able to read this question and be able to drag and drop. The coach will have, Mrs. Patel is the coach, and she will have some pointers for the students. Sometimes she'll say, make sure you read every question before you answer. Take your time. This is the part of the test where we see students fly through this test because it's very different than what they're doing in the writing and in the speaking. This over here, they think, oh, it's kind of like multiple choice or a matching game. But this is where we see a lot of mistakes. So we want to remind our students, take your time with this assessment. A student can take this in 15 minutes if they're confident, but they really should take their time. Again, it's not a timed portion of the assessment, but they should really take their time. They need to be able to interpret and analyze the prompts and read and listen to prompts in a variety of topics in order to answer these questions. And then over here is a screen grab of the presentational writing. This part of the assessment allows learners to present information, concepts, and ideas, giving the test taker a chance to inform, explain, persuade, narrate, all this on different types of topics. But these prompts are all relevant to skills and experiences that learners have already had. It's not going to be a historical view or factual situation. It's going to be questions for them to be able to answer, things that they've done, on a daily basis that they'll be able to speak about. They'll have 6 opportunities to answer questions for this one. This is the one that I say normally we're seeing on average is taking about 45 minutes, a little bit longer than a half an hour. So just keep that in mind for your students. And then over here, as many schools are aware, being compliant with the web content and accessibility guidelines is important. AAPPL and LTI are committed to the accessibility across all our platforms, and we have many accessibility features already built into the Apple for students that have IPs or 504 plans. For example, unlimited viewing attempts in the interpersonal listening and speaking is something that you would need to request, like I mentioned, through that accommodations link. Those requests are handled by our accommodations team, and they're really, really good at getting back to you about that. We do request that if you know that a student is going to be taking this assessment and needs that additional accommodation, that you let us know 10 days prior to them taking that assessment, so we have enough time to make sure that that student is ready. This over here is a very, very important slide on this. So this is the actual proficiency scale. It's a visual of how the Apple is rated. It provides a more granular look into students' proficiency levels and their journeys throughout higher proficiency levels, right? Secondary ed learners will hang in the middle over here, like in that intermediate area for a little while. So the reason for the sub levels over here are to show how much a student has improved, and to give them a sense of an accomplishment. So this is really, really nice. Teachers get feedback and strategies to share with students at the different relevant levels over here. Now, I mentioned earlier that we have 3 forms of the Apple. We have Apple Form E, Apple Form A, and Apple Form B. Apple Form E, again, is for our elementary school students. That's only our interpersonal listening and speaking portion of the assessment. And that tests anywhere from a novice low to an intermediate mid for those students. Apple Form A tests in that same area between novice 1 to an intermediate 4. Apple Form B takes it to that next level. So it kind of eliminates some of those novice questions that that the student might have already surpassed. But it starts them off at a novice 4 level and allows them to test all the way up to an advanced 1. Okay. Now, I know that every state has a different level for gaining the seal of biliteracy. So I did a little bit of research here. And you have 2 standards in Nebraska, from my understanding, is you have the Nebraska Seal of Biliteracy, the gold seal, and then you have the silver seal. Now over here, I see that the equivalent of an intermediate high or an advanced low qualifies you for that gold seal, right? So that's intermediate high or advanced low. So if we go back here and we go to intermediate high and advanced low, if your students are going for the gold seal, they would need to take Form B because Form A does not test that high. So when you're thinking about it, Form B allows them to reach that gold level. So think about that as you're choosing. Then the Nebraska Seal for Silver, the Silver Seal of Biliteracy, has demonstrated a performance equivalent to an intermediate mid as identified by AAPPL. So again, if I go back to our slide prior to that, AAPPL identifies an intermediate mid over here is the I3s and I4s, right? Over here. So anywhere in this area, they could get the Silver Seal of Biliteracy. But also, you can use it for Form A, or you could use it in Form B. So in Form B, your students will be able to capture both the Silver Seal and also the Gold Seal. So it all depends on what you're assessing. If you're using the Apple for, let's say, a lot of your novice students, your let's say French 1, French 2, or Spanish 1, Spanish 2, some of your lower grades, middle school, you might be inclined to do Form A because they're not really testing for the Seal of Biliteracy yet. It'll give you a good gauge on where they land. But if you're testing your 11th and 12th graders and they're going for the Seal of Biliteracy, and you feel that they have an opportunity to reach that gold level, I would suggest going with B. But again, that's up to you. If you have any additional questions on this, I'll be happy to answer those for you. But over here is a very important scale that's been created by AAPPL. I'm going to scroll through here. Some of this is the best. This over here is some of the best stuff that teachers and students both love. So this over here is an official certificate. It feels really significant because it is for these students. These students will take this assessment, and you, as an administrator of the assessment, will have access to the site where you order the test, receive the scores, and all the data. You will have an opportunity and access to print out these certificates for those students. And along with that certificate comes this. This is a score description that shows can-do statements and a strategy. So I'm going to just zoom in on this a little bit. Over here, this is just one part that I've zoomed in on, is it shows you which mode the student took the assessment in, what level they received, an I4, a score description. So the score description is a can-do statement. These reports are detailed and robust, and also provides a strategy for improvement over here on the right-hand side. The score description will let a student know what he or she is able to do in the language of this mode of communication. There's a full-on description based on the AAPPL can-do statements and world readiness standards. The strategy section on the right-hand side of the report offers concrete guidance for what the program, the teacher, and the student can be doing in order to move up to that next proficiency scale to reach that next level. So the Apple was built as a tool and scaffold for programs that are working towards that, to collect data and inform instruction. So this is a really, really neat feature for you and your students as you help improve them on their journey of language learning. Now, I wanted to share a little bit about the pricing structure for the Apple. This over here will show you that the Apple is $20 for all 4 portions of the assessment. Okay. The way that the Apple is purchased, purchases are made by the school or the district. So you can decide. The way it works with us, I get a lot of people reaching out to me, Carlos, I want to give the Apple to my students. What do I need to do? I share a presentation on the Apple. I ask them what their needs are. Is it for the Seal of Biliteracy? Are you thinking about goal setting, benchmarking, things of that nature? So we help to strategize. Then we discuss which portions of the assessment they're taking. For the Seal of Biliteracy, you do need to take all 4 sections of the Apple. That qualifies you for the Seal of Biliteracy. There are moments where maybe if you're taking Form A and you're trying to see where your students are for benchmarking, you can decide, I want to see how my students are doing with just their listening and speaking, or just their presentation. So what AAPPL and LTI have done is been able to kind of create this a la carte feature, where if you're purchasing all 4, it's $20. But if you needed to just purchase one of these, you could. So for the interpersonal listening and speaking, it's a $10 purchase. For the presentational writing alone, it's $5. And for the interpretive reading and interpretive listening, those are sold together, even though they are 2 separate portions of the assessment, for $5. So altogether, that brings us at $20. Now, I know there are probably some questions about proctoring. So proctoring can be done in many different places. And that is something that you would determine as you're ordering the assessment for your students. Proctoring can be done at home by a parent. and at school by teachers. And proctoring is just very similar to any other standardized test where you make sure that the student isn't using, isn't speaking to other students. They're not using their cell phones to answer any questions. They're not opening any additional screens. They're just focused on taking the assessment at that time. So proctor will walk around, and we do have guidelines and things like that for people to view for proctors. And then we also have a computer proctoring. So our computer proctoring is for those students that might be somewhere else or at a virtual school that they might want to take the Apple. And what that is, that would be an additional $4 for this feature. And that is a video camera that will record your student taking the assessment. And what they would do is they would flag if there was any kind of unnecessary or kind of suspicious behavior, they would flag that. So that's an additional $4 for that part of the assessment, but that can also be done. So there are many different ways that the Apple can be proctored. Now, this is really, really important. How can students leverage their scores? We often think about language, like language acquisition. A lot of you are instructors and you understand how important being biliterate or knowing a second, third, fourth language is. And that's one thing about me that I think has helped me a lot throughout my life and my career, is being able to speak a second language. It's really allowed me to, separate myself from people that are at the same level of me professionally or even better sometimes, but it gives me that extra branch, right? Where I am bilingual, I speak Spanish, and I learned it, at home, and I've been able to improve on that and build on it. And that's something that we need to remind our students. A lot of us have learned our languages in a heritage, like at home with our parents. And if you speak Arabic, if you speak Vietnamese, if you speak, Polish, these are languages that are very, very helpful. And you should find the love for them and continue to grow that, right? So there are many different ways that students can leverage their scores. So an official actual certificate is a useful in educational, professional, and government areas. So one really, sometimes we think about, oh, this is for our college students or when they go away to college. What about our students that aren't going to college? What about our students that are going into the military? How does that help them? So the Army now gives a higher base pay for language skills, and the actual certified language proficiency is required. So if a student shows that they've taken the Apple assessment and have achieved the Seal of Biliteracy, this can help them along the way. Certification Commission for Healthcare Interpreters, the CCHI, accepts the Seal of Biliteracy as a qualifier for their program. So this can help them be interpreters in many different ways. So these are things that students can use to separate themselves when it comes to putting something on their resume and applying for a job. Again, you could post this on your resume as a distinguished scholar or biliteracy language skills. You can put this on your LinkedIn profile, which is huge. This is an official score. You could tell someone. I remember my first interview out of college was, oh yes, I'm bilingual. I said, well, how do we know you're bilingual? How do we know you speak another language? I didn't have an actual certificate to show that. And this was years ago. But now our students can show, well, here's my score. These are my can-do statements. This is what I can provide for you as an employee, as a member of the team. And then it's also very useful for our students that are going to colleges. There's a couple colleges now that are accepting the Seal of Biliteracy as credit for their college programs. So we should have a list of that pretty soon. And it's just random schools right now, but they are accepting this as some credit for language courses. So you can use it as a reference for scholarships. It could assist you in your college selection, and then some universities again use actual proficiency certificate to award credit. So these are all really, really important things that we should talk to our students about if they're on the, thinking about, should I take the Apple? Should I take this assessment? If they have a choice, the choice should always be, why not? Try it out. For $20, you can really make a big difference in your future here. So how can teachers leverage their scores? So teachers can spend one-on-one time with students looking at their scores, their strategy, and their can-do statements to help students kind of to look for patterns and help students, bridge that gap. And does one area stand out as needing more attention than others? You know, if I'm an I3 in presentational writing, it's not bad. But if I'm a novice 2 in speaking, then the teacher can see the opportunity on how to remediate. Okay, Carlos is a very good writer, but his speaking is a little bit, but there's a lot below. How can we help Carlos improve on that? Do students have similar suggested strategies across modes of communication? You know, practice telling stories, reading stories, or writing stories. It gives you tons of ideas. And highlight what students can do in the description across modes and strategies. Like this student can do this actual task in writing, speaking, listening, you know. So that is a really good thing to be able to see that across all skills. It's very, very important for students and teachers. So how can teachers help prepare students for the AAPPL? This is really important. You can't teach to the test, but you can help students prepare by implementing strategies and practice into your curriculum and to build a comfort level. So practicing writing should often be done on a keyboard. If they're writing something, have them type it out before the test. The test day should not be the first time these students are using a keyboard for taking the assessment. Some other things that we do provide is a list of AAPPL topics. So our AAPPL topics will stay the same year after year. We have a list of topics that we write that ACTFL creates the questions around. And our assessment is changed once a year. It's very different than a lot of our competitors. So our assessment gets refreshed once a year. And it's normally around anywhere between August and November. So we do notify our instructors about that so that they're ready to go. And then the most important thing is to just practice a lot. Try to have conversations as much as possible, telling stories, adding different little pieces to the story as you know the students are practicing. How can teachers leverage reporting tools? Again, they can benchmarking and reporting up the line. The school, the year, language, monitor achievements and SLOs, progress toward biliteracy requirements. Teachers and student can measure class and student growth. You can leverage this tool by showing how well your program did from the beginning to the end. A lot of people, we have different schools that use the AAPPL in different ways. Some schools will test early in the fall and then again in the spring to show the growth of that student. Some schools will go ahead and use that fall assessment to determine where they're placing their student. I mean, that spring assessment to determine where they're going to place their students come around in the fall, whether it be at a different school, middle schoolers going into high school, or just to show the growth of the program. If you're implementing something new, a new writing program, if there are new teachers at the school that are bringing in these great ideas, this can show their growth in many different ways. So you can look for patterns across schools and across different languages. So the AAPPL does share some reporting like that. And we're going to go into some of the reporting that AAPPL can provide. So this is a quick tool of some comparison tools. This report I really like. So for instance, this report over here is discussing this particular high school and how the students have done in comparison to other schools nationally that took this assessment also. So you can say, I want to see how my 11th graders did compared to all other 11th graders that took the AAPPL assessment across the nation. Now, the national average is this orange dot, and then this bar shows how well your students have done. And you can narrow this down based on the data you put in to that spreadsheet as you're registering your students. So this is really important stuff over here. As you can see, this school is doing really well. They're either on average or above average in a lot of these. So this is a nice report to be able to show how well your program is doing, or to even decide, oh, wow, we need to really improve our presentational writing if it's lower than the national average. Let's talk to some colleagues. Let's maybe go through to a couple, more of these webinars and learn some more stuff on how we can help improve our students' proficiency. This report over here can share how students are doing at your school across different grades. Now, this is a 5th through 8th grade score report. So it'll show you how your students are doing for the interpersonal listening and speaking, presentational writing, interpretive listening, and interpretive reading. So you're over here, you're able to see what each grade level is doing. Now, at a glance, I'm looking at this report. What do I see? I see that the 7th grade is really having a hard time with their speaking, in comparison to these other grades. What are we teaching in the 7th grade? Does it get that much more difficult in the 7th grade? And are they learning so much in the 7th grade that by the time they get to the 8th grade, now they're doing really well again? So gives you a chance to brainstorm with your colleagues at your school and to determine how to help improve this. What are we doing with interpersonal listening and speaking and our interpretive reading or our interpretive listening? How can we help combine this to help improve this score? What can we do? It gives you a chance to brainstorm amongst your colleagues and in your school. This over here can you can select by different languages. So if you're looking at the school, you don't only have just one language, but all the languages that you're assessing. This report I also like if you are testing students consecutively year after year. So this is called our longitudinal data report. Our longitudinal data report will house student grades at a glance, giving you a chance to really see, oh, this particular student took this assessment in Spanish 4 years in a row. Let's see how well they've done. This first year, they only took these 3 sections, and the following year, they took the interpersonal listening and speaking. The next time they took these 3 sections, they definitely improved. That's great. And then again, over here, they've improved below. You can see either improvements or maybe if they're staying the same, equal, or even going down some. You're able to see that at a glance, which gives you a good way to report back to parents, report to students themselves, and try to brainstorm with your student on how we can continue to build their language proficiency. And then the Seal of Biliteracy. This is an award obviously given by a school or a school district or state board of education and recognition for students who attain the proficiency in 2 or more languages at a high school level. So it takes the form of the seal and appears in a transcript and a diploma. Graduating seniors is a statement of accomplishment for future employers and for future college admissions. I like this slide because it really shows how important it is for some of these students over here to be able to have gained what they've done and how well they've done. And it's really, really nice to be able to provide this for our students because it shows how important it is and it makes it official. It's not just like another thing that they learn. No, this is something that's going to help you throughout life. Cherish it. And here's a very nice certificate to show you how well you've done. Over here is how the Seal of Biliteracy has been recognized. So far, only South Dakota is still in the early stages, but the entire country is following along with the Seal of Biliteracy, and we're really excited about that. So I'm not sure how this was as of September of 2022. We will definitely update this with South Dakota and see how well they're doing moving forward with our next report. But we're very, very excited, and AAPPL has supported the Seal of Biliteracy initiative and it was being formulated, and the AAPPL assessments are being widely used across the country. Again, this is a really good slide, and I can share this with you all on why it is important for the Seal of Biliteracy and to learn a second language, the importance of having the knowledge of another language. So it says over here, 9 out of 10 US employers rely on employees with language skills other than English. That's huge. That's a big deal. 56% say that the foreign language demand will increase in the next 5 years. 47% of the state a need for language skills exclusively for the domestic market, and 1 in 3 language-dependent U.S. employers report a language skills gap. These are gaps that we need to close. 1 in every 4 U.S. employers lost business due to the lack of language skills. So there are many reasons why languages are important, and these are reasons that we need to be sharing with our parents, with our students, and encouraging our students to be able to continue learning and becoming, biliterate. I had spoken earlier today about our other assessment, which is our OPI and WPT. This is the assessment that if you have any other questions about languages that aren't part of the AAPPL, that your students are proficient in and would like to take an assessment to qualify for the Seal of Biliteracy, this is for our 11th and 12th graders only. AAPPL has created an OPI and WPT specifically for the Seal of Biliteracy. This test is a little bit different, and if you're interested in any of these languages, feel free to just email me at the end of the call. I'll be able to at the end of the webinar, I'll share my email address so you're able to to ask any questions about this, but this is very, very important. If we have any students that speak Croatian or Cantonese, and we don't want them to lose that ability. We want them to be able to use it when possible and when necessary. So please encourage your students to continue to practice. Languages are a beautiful thing, and it takes you a long way. So throughout, we'll be able to share a bunch of different resources. As I mentioned, we have our Apple demo site, which is very important. Over here, you'll be able to see some score reports, some sample score reports, similar to the ones that I showed you, but you'll be able to look at them a little bit more in depth. This link over here is some tips videos for our students, parents, proctors, teachers, everything, and our tasks and topics. Our Apple score descriptors will show you what the descriptions actually mean. And we have tons of resources here that we're able to help. One really good thing about LTI is that our support desk and our help desk is very, very active. They have a 24-hour turnaround time at like 97% at this moment. We test a lot of students throughout the year, so we are able to turn things around for you pretty quickly. We have this email address that helps right away. What happens is if you have an issue or a question, you can email that email address, and they supply you with a case number right away. That case number then gets transferred to the person who's going to best answer your question. If it's me, they make sure that it goes to me. If it has to do with IT or some other kind of support system, it goes to the correct person. At that point, we're able to get back to you within 24 hours. And then we also have a 1-800 number that is available between 8 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. That is for, let's say you're in the middle of a test and something's going on and you kind of need some quick support. You're able to answer that. You're able to call here, and these numbers can get transferred to either me or someone else on our support team, directly if available. So it's a nice way to be able to service our customers and make sure that they are, that they are aware, that we're aware of them testing and how important this is for everyone taking the assessment. So one thing that we'd love to do is that we'd love to collaborate. Consider getting involved with Apple Educator Panel. The Educator Panel members collaborate with LTI to inspire, mentor, and share knowledge with fellow educators, using actual assessments or examining ways to use actual tests in their language programs. So visit us at this applecentral.com, and I'll share that again with you. Subscribe. You'll be able to gather some information. We have some newsletters that go out on a monthly basis that will inform you on maybe new topics, new languages, and how other schools might be using the Apple that have been really, really successful. So please feel free to join. And I really just want to thank you all for joining the call today. And I'm happy to take any questions. Our team is really devoted to language learners. And I'll open up the floor now to any questions. I see there's some stuff in the chat, and I'll be able to answer some of those now.
Yes, we do have some question. I think it's 3 sum of question. Actually, you already answered in our presentation. Question number 1, you mentioned about different form of the different areas, but which suggest for Seal of Biliteracy. I think you actually answered it, which is if we want to have for Nebraska, if we want to have gold and silver together, I think Form B will be the best choice, right?
Yes, that's correct. Form B would be the best choice if you're trying to reach that golden seal of biliteracy. It would be the only form that you can use to reach that level. So I would go with Form B. Yes.
Yeah, which is if just for an interest about the silver one, maybe the Form B actually works for that.
Yes. Yeah, Form B would work for both the silver and the gold for the Seal of Biliteracy.
Yeah. Okay. So is there a time limit on each of the speaking prompts in which they have to use?
Yes. So for the speaking prompt, there is a time limit about 1 minute and 20 seconds. So they don't have to use the entire 1 minute and 20 seconds, but they do have to at least speak for 7 seconds in order for it to qualify as an answer. So it'll start recording for 7 seconds. Let's say a student doesn't know what to say and decides, I'm not going to answer this question. So they have to wait 7 seconds before they can hit the next button in order to go to the next question. So 7 seconds is the least amount of time, and a minute and 20 seconds is the most, but they don't need to fill in that entire time. What we're looking for is direct, the best way they can answer the question.
Okay. Third question is if it's a listening and a reading, or will usually be ready, or just like when you finish it, so be ready in day quick, or writing and speaking, which is when we will get the result of each of the parts of the test. When,
Yep.
yeah.
Great question. That's important to know because a lot of schools will be on they'll think, okay, we need to get our scores in by a certain date, right?
Yeah.
So I always like to work backwards. So for the interpretive reading and interpretive listening, again, that's machine graded. So you get that pretty instant within an hour, 2 hours. I always like to say 24 hours just to be safe, but those are pretty instant. You'll start receiving those scores. For the interpersonal listening and speaking and presentational writing, those get sent out. Those get sent out to our AAPPL certified raters. So that's a human being that's rating that assessment. Those get sent out, and that takes 10 business days to get the rating back. So for instance, if your deadline is, let's say, May 30th, you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to deliver that test and receive the ratings for that assessment. So I would say if May 30th is the deadline, I want to make sure that I'm delivering my assessments early May, not nowhere past May 7th, just so I have at that point, May 17th, I'll start getting my ratings. And then by the 30th, I'll know that everything is secure and clean. So just think about always adding an additional buffer. There are moments where we are overloaded with people taking the assessments, and they might take 10 days, 11 days, or you might have to say, hey, Carlos, it's been 11 days and I have not received my rating. So what we do is we try to expedite that and say, hey, this one particular instructor is waiting. Can we help here?
Well, for me, my personal experience usually for the speaking and writing, it's also pretty quick. Usually I get 2-3 days. They actually finish, and usually I will get the results. It's just like not all maybe everybody ready in the same time. So yeah,
right.
I think it's very efficient.
They do come in separately. So sometimes you'll get one in within 3 days, and then the other one you'll get 8 days, 10 days, depending on how it's going.
Okay. One more question, which is can I order the test by myself?
So that's a great question. You cannot order the test by yourself. The test has to be ordered through a school. So it has to be associated with a school. It can't be purchased online by itself. One other really important thing is that due to keeping the validity of the test available, sometimes I get questions from instructors or even parents that'll say, can I take the test also to see how it's. We do not allow instructors or adults to take this assessment for the Apple. The Apple is strictly created for our K-12 program. And in order to keep the test valid and make sure that it's valid throughout for the entire country for that year, we limit it to just students taking the assessment. But that's why the demo is there, so you can see the experience. I think that's important to say because I know that instructors are interested, and I get that question a lot. So I wanted to make sure that was clear.
Okay, and one more is do we contact you or create accounts through someone to order the test and getting the proctoring information?
Yeah, that's good. That's another great question. So in order to create an account there, you can visit our website. I can share a link with you all, which is really important. It's a registration link. Actually, I could probably pull it up right now and I'll put it in the chat. I think could be super helpful. Bear with me. I think that it can really help out in many situations here to be able to register right away. Our registration process is pretty simple, and it doesn't cost extra. There's no fee to registering for an account with Language Testing International. So even if you were to test 3 years from now, you already have something going. Even if you want to deliver one assessment, you deliver that one assessment, there's no limit to the amount of tests that you can or can't take or deliver for your students. So that registration link is going to walk you through the process of registering. Once you receive a username and password, then you have access to our system. We invoice after the assessments have been taken and rated by your students. So let's say, for instance, you're delivering your test and you say, I want to deliver it to 50 students. And you put in all your 50 students into the spreadsheet, you register them, and there's a registration process. After you register those students, we don't invoice you right away for those 50. We wait to see how many students have taken that test. Once it's rated, that's when we deliver a invoice to your school based on the information that you've put here in the Apple registration. So we only invoice after the tests have been taken and rated by your students. And we only go by that number. If you entered 50 and only 20 students take the assessment, you only get invoiced for those 20.
Okay.
How should, okay, there was a couple other questions. I'm sorry.
Yes. Well, you go ahead if you want to. So
Yeah.
can I view my students' writing and speaking after you have taken it, or I just get a score?
That's an awesome question. Very, very important. So for 60 days, whoever has access to your site as an instructor, as an administrator, can actually view and listen to the writing and the interpersonal listening and speaking for 60 days after the student has completed that assessment. After those 60 days, it is removed. So you have 60 days in order to do that and view it and kind of see, which also allows you to maybe say, wow, this student did a lot better than an intermediate 2. Why did they receive an intermediate 2 for this assessment? So you have an opportunity to request what's called a rating review if you don't agree with the score that the student received. That rating review is free up to 10% of the amount of tests that you've delivered to your students. So if you've delivered, let's say 50, you can do 5 assessments for those students for free rating review. And those are requested right from our site. Those get sent out and they get rated by a completely different person to ensure that the rating is accurate.
Okay, so for me, I actually can read from which is I do after my students finish the test, I can see what they're writing and also can listen to their recording for their speaking and the writing part. So actually, as teacher, that's very useful because I actually can have understanding on why that students get that the grades. Maybe it's too short, it does not produce enough amounts of the material, or maybe that's just the grammar or the speaking quality is very poor. So that's actually very useful for teachers, especially after test, if you want to help your student to review it. That will be
Absolutely.
Oh, another one is who should be ordering the tests for the homeschool students? And after that, if we still have a question, actually, I would invite you can actually unmute yourself and just ask question directly. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
So for the homeschool students, that's a great question, Crystal. I would like to I'd probably have to get back to you on that. Oftentimes the students that are taking the assessments at home might be affiliated with a school or a district. If they are, then that's how we would do it. But that's a great question. I'll have to get back to you a little bit more about that. I'm going to take that as a no. Homeschool students. Yeah. I'll report back to you on that. Let's see if there's another message. Can you share future webinars helping teachers? Yes, absolutely. So if, as I mentioned on the presentation, if you want to become part of our network, of our panel of teachers, we do send out newsletters. I'm actually going to be attending a conference this weekend in Ohio, the OFLA conference, and we'll be presenting there. So if any of you will be there, maybe we'll be able to meet in person, and that'll be great. So there are tons of things that we do at Language Testing International, and we would love to be able to provide you with links. You can follow us on social media. I'll provide some of those also in a follow-up email that you all can decide whether or not you want to be part of that group or that mailing or those information sessions. But I think that that's really, really, really nice of you all to want to join. And the more instructors that we have across the country, the better perspective we get on what our students' needs are. And, as much as we'll be helping you, you will be helping us to determine, what the true needs are of the language community. Let's see, there's another question. If I'm not the person registering my students, how am I the teacher able to see the scores? Perfect. Another really good question, Megan. So there's an opportunity once you create the person that creates the account will be the main person attached. Now you can also have access to that site with limited things that you can access. Maybe you won't be able to order tests, but you'll be able to see your students' scores. And that'll be the only thing that you can actually do. You can see certain reports. So there are ways that you can have an account to just certain parts of the site. And whoever's the main person that's ordering the assessment would have access to all the modules on that site. But that's a wonderful question, because I know that there are teachers that oftentimes, there's one person that's in charge that's ordering the assessments, and they're the ones that are able to see that. And then they're often, the ones in charge of delivering the ratings and stuff like that. It could be really hectic for some instructors and administrators. So to give access to certain modules of our site is very important. And I can walk through that process with anyone that has those questions.
Oh, okay. So is this a PowerPoint? So is this slides? Well, like we going to share this with the audience,
Yes,
or
absolutely. I could share the presentation. I'll create a PDF of them, and then I'll send it out to you, and be able to share that with everyone. And if any of you will be at the conference this weekend, please stop by our booth. I'd love to meet you in person. Oh, you're gonna be there. That's great.
Yeah,
Yes.
I will. Yeah, I will go to Ohio this
Okay.
Friday, Saturday there. And do you mind to share some contact information if we have a further question, or yeah?
Not at all. I will. I'm going to put in my email right here in the chat. So I'll make sure I wrote that correctly. So that's my direct email. Oh, I sent it to you. I'm sorry. I'm supposed to send it to
Okay.
everyone.
Yeah.
I'll just type it in again.
Oh, great. Someone is the first time has the
Oh, the first time going?
yeah.
Oh, exactly. That's great. So Kat, if you have any questions throughout, if you need any kind of additional just training, let us know. We are available. If I'm not available, I'm helpful. I know that I have a big team of people. We have another gentleman, his name's Ethan Span. He's on our team, and he works directly with making sure that everyone gets onboarded. That's an important process. We want to make sure that your first time around taking the assessments is a comfortable one. So do not hesitate to ask questions. We get to everyone. So again, my email address is cmercado@languagetesting.com. If you have questions about the registration process or anything, feel free. We're here to help. It's the first time around can almost feels, every time you do something for the first time, it feels a lot more difficult than it truly is. And once you get the hang of it, you might have one or two questions here and there. But I work with districts that are so big. I meet with them maybe once a month sometimes, and there's always questions. So don't feel free. I mean, don't worry about asking questions. We're always there.
Well, some suggestion maybe for the first time.
Yes.
You can walk through students with those modules, like at least them have some little bit like experience with that. What kind of question they're going to have, and how they're going to answer a question. Let them have a little bit of the test around, so just with you, like ask question, especially for the speaking parts or the writing part, you can do that. Test your headphone, make sure all the equipments are okay, and you don't have any issue with them. Another thing is that when you actually having tests, ask your students turn off all the other websites or other apps. Only keep that one on. Otherwise, sometimes it will all like kick the students out of the test quite often. Then so those are some experience or some suggestion I have.
Yeah, those are all great suggestions. Using that demo site is extremely important. And just a reminder to those students, do not open another screen, try to focus. And another really important one is, I always say, is just know that this isn't a test that you're going to fail. You're not going to fail this test. So just give us everything that you know, try your best, This is an assessment about what you do know, not about what you don't know. We're over here trying to figure out where you land, not about, it's not going to give you an actual pass or fail grade. We're just trying to help. So that's always a good reminder. Well, very good. You all have my information. It's been a pleasure meeting with you. I'm excited to be in contact with more schools and across the state, across the country, especially in Nebraska. I've actually reached out. A lot of people from Nebraska have reached out to us already. So I really appreciate all of you who are already using the Apple and maybe sharing good feedback with them. And let's continue to do that. We're here to assist in any questions, even if you need to brainstorm. There's a lot of those sessions that we have too. So we want to make sure that we're helping you.
Thank you very much for introducing since I think you definitely bring up a lot of useful information. And keep in touch. Let us know if there's a further PD or anything about the Apple tests. Thank you again. And I guess that's the presentation for today. Thanks for everybody. Have a nice night. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Everyone take care.
Next time, and we're going to meet on the Central State meeting. Yeah.
Yes, very good. I'll see you there.
Yeah. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.